Welcome back, folks, to the WP-Tonic Roundtable Show. We have a roundtable show every Friday around 8:30 Pacific Standard Time. I've got a powerful panel. I think I've managed to get some decent stories for us to discuss. I'm going to let the panel quickly introduce themselves. I'm going to start with my close friend, John Locke. John, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, John Locke, SEO practitioner for manufacturing companies.
Right, and I've got Matt Medeiros in the house. Love the hat, Matt.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah.
Mattreport.com, Pagely.com.
That's great. And I've got Adrian, my co-host. Adrian, would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. How we doing? Adrian from Groundhog here. We build marketing automation and sales plugins for WordPress.
Got my friend Sallie. Sallie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Certainly. I'm Sallie Goetsch, the WP fangirl, organizer of the East Bay WordPress meetup in Oakland, California.
Right. And I've got my friend Chris. Chris, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Chris from Lifter LMS, which is a WordPress solution for creating, selling, and protecting engaging online courses.
I've had a morning already. I've had some technical struggles with Zooms, beloved listeners and viewers, but we struggled for you. I'm muddled now, but that should add to the excitement. Before we go into our main stories, I just want to talk about one of our sponsors. That's Breezely, Breezely.co. It's one of the most innovative page builders on the market at the present moment, I feel. If that's interesting to you or your clients, I suggest that you go over to Breezely and have a look at what they've got to offer. They've just upgraded their page building system. I think it's got some unique elements to it that make it stand out from the competition in considerable areas. So like I say, if that's interesting to you, go over to Breezely and also tell them that you heard about them on the WP-Tonic show. So let's go into the first story. Matt Mullenweg, State of the Word 2019. Let's start with Matt. Go there, Matt. What did you think of Matt Mullenweg's State of the Word?
I transcribed the talk using the ever-lovely Temi service for 10 cents a word or whatever it is. And I kind of pulled out some high-level statistics that not counting the short movie about community that happened at the top of the discussion, that the core focus, as one would imagine, was focused around Gutenberg, blocks, block building, stuff like that. So I pulled out, he said Gutenberg 72 times, he said block and blocks 84 times, community 20 times, and governance once. Of course, that all hinges on the accuracy of Temi, which is just okay at best, in my opinion. I thought it was a fine talk. It was exactly what I expected. And I thought the community short video, open source video was nice and kind as a recognition to the community. But that's where it ended for me. And then, of course, the discussion was heavily around Gutenberg. It was exactly what I had thought it was going to be. No change in course, I guess.
Yeah. I got to tell you, Matt, I had a little conversation with my friend here, John, yesterday. And over the months, I thought you'd been a little bit harsh on things a little bit, Matt. But I just realised it was like that moment on the road to Damascus. Honest, John will testify to this. You're absolutely right what you've said about this whole thing. I've just realised yesterday that you were totally right. Not to be terribly horrible to Matt Mullenweg, which I really don't want to be, I think he's gaslighting himself as much as he's gaslighting us lot.
I would probably agree with that.
Basically, there's two extremes. He wants to make a ton of money, but he wants also to be seen as the groovy guy, the community guy. But you know why I'm saying this, Matt, is that fundamentally when Wix and the other leading page builder only combined, I think they've only got 2 to 3% of the market. but you're making out that the growth that you're going to need for this 300 million injection into your company, the only growth that you're going to be able to get for WordPress.com is not from taking market share from Wix and other competitors. The only way you're going to get a return to pay for that investment is to take it away from your real competitor, which is WordPress.org.
Right.
That's the only way you can do it, isn't it?
Yeah, which translates to all of the fine people who build some great plugins and services. It's easy for us to label Matt as a target, or to put the target on Matt's back for a lot of this, understandably so. And, you know, as I play with Gutenberg more and use it more, you know, I see the opportunity. I see the opportunity beyond, you know, what I've been saying for a while, beyond WordPress, like Gutenberg doing other things. And then I see the pure reaction from people who attended WordCamp US. You know, a lot of people are sort of putting their highlight reels together about the time that they spent there, how much they enjoyed it. And a lot of people just really loved being around the rest of us. And it's important to remind ourselves that, you know, Matt isn't the community. He is obviously a big piece of it, and he can, you know, move it in different directions. But when you see the positive reaction of everybody just enjoying WordCamp US, it is, you know, as somebody who didn't attend it and just looked at Twitter, it is a nice reminder, because we can get so, put our blinders on so much, that the community is, you know, is still really strong, and you want to see it continue. And that he is not, you know, an Automatic is not, you know, just the community. So it's great to see how much everybody enjoyed it, got re-energized, met old and new friends. That's the magic. It's the magic I don't want to see go away because of certain decisions, but that's the magic. And that's what I appreciate about, you know, all of that. The talk was just, you know, the talk. And it's easy. It's also easy to say, like, you know, if you thought Matt of a political figure, you would say, well, man, your PR lately, a lot of people in the community upset about you. A lot of people think this community is going away. What does a guy with a lot of money do? Let's make a movie. Let's make a movie and throw it out there and say, hey, we know everything about this community. We love the community too. We just made this movie for you, right?
I thought the movie was made by entirely a different initiative.
Well,
and he just sort of said, oh, hey, let's show this at WordCamp.
Yeah. And then, you know, who knows, like, if that's, who knows, you know, but the idea is like, there's still no, after 2 years of like real in the trenches of what's really going on with leadership, it's sort of just like, here's this movie. It's pretty cool. I'll talk about it, but not really push things forward. So they mentioned one thing, and I'll get off my soapbox. I think he mentioned one thing about highlighting contributors, which, you know, me and many other people have said before. You know, when you look at the success of like a Shopify or BigCommerce, or these people who highlight partners or partnerships or the community, yeah, okay, that's a step in the right direction. And they tried this before with Jetpack Professionals, which I don't even know what happened to it, just kind of disappeared.
Gosh, I don't even remember that.
Yeah,
it was a very small blip.
Yeah, it was literally a blip. So, okay, this is good. Hey, okay, fine. Let's highlight people in the community. I'm 100% behind that. But what else can, you know, we do? Because at the start of that movie, and maybe I have to go back and watch it again, short film or whatever you want to call it, is like the first question that they lead with is, hey, it's like paraphrasing, is this big thing worth billions of dollars? How do you feel about all these people who put effort into it and don't get paid? You know, summarizing there. I never got an answer out of it. You know, there was never an answer.
The film kind of goes back to it a few times, and you know, it in a way it you know, it doesn't answer that question, and it shows Matt struggling to answer that question.
Right. So again, like, 5 for the future. Yeah. Hey, this is all great. when everyone's, it's when everything is working, the way it should be. And again, I'm not a guy who wants to see WordPress go away. Absolutely not. I want to see the success of it, but I could go either way with rating his conversation.
So, Chris, I don't see Gutenberg as really being the fundamental problem in some ways, because I think anybody would say that the editor needed updating dramatically for the 21st century. But on the other hand, as I said, I had a chat with John here, and making out that Squarespace and Wix combined, I think they've only got 3% of the market. Really, the real target for Automatic is all the consultants, all the people that built the platform up. That's their real target.
I think that would be kind of sabotaging, though, if they really made that the target, because it would just implode. It's like cannibalizing the community. So that may be happening some, but well, let me just back up and say, like, the talk that I saw, it was just what I expected. What leaders often do in a scenario like that is they create whiplash. Like, hey, that was 2019. Here we go in 2020, totally new plan. Like, Matt's just executing the 4-year vision or whatever, which I think is kind of cool. Whiplash, it can be fun, but it can also be kind of jarring, especially if you've got your livelihood depending on it. But going back to the 35% or wherever we're at, I think right now the goal isn't to eat the whole pie. I think it's time to stop and pivot to, instead of expansion, focus on the core and improve on the percentage of the internet that's already there, both for the for-profit companies like Automatic and the service providers and the product providers, but also just the community as a whole. Because a third of the internet is fine. That's plenty. The internet is a really big place. And I mean, when Matt was when they asked him about in the documentary about what about all these people working for free, he pivots the conversation to the 4 freedoms of the GPL, the right to modify, distribute, sell, all this other stuff that you can do with it. So I was kind of left hanging with the question of, how do we help the community monetize? Like, if there are people working for free and the balance is out of sync, how do we help with monetization? Because there's a lot of ways to monetize WordPress, and not everybody. We've talked before about equal opportunity, not for all kind of thing opportunity to monetize. But I think maybe that's something to really focus on, is helping the community monetize better or in a more balanced way. But not everybody can.
Right. Well, all of us make money from WordPress. And
Yeah.
I don't know that the consultant developer type work would necessarily disappear if Automatic's share of the pie, if the WordPress.com got bigger, because people would still need, help building websites. And there are people who do work, building websites on WordPress.com. And I also think the issue is not so much, or the perceived threat is not so much the percentage of the internet that the Shopifys and Wixes and Weebly's have now, but the percentage that they could get out of the people who right now maybe don't use any content management system, or the people, they do exist, who don't have any website yet at all but might come to, or the people who just are like part of the expanding population of the planet. I still think that the ambition to be like, the ubiquitous everywhere, everything on the web is delusional. And I see Adrian has something he desperately wants to say, so I'll be quiet there.
Yeah, good. Off you go, Adrian.
Just to play off what Chris had mentioned, I don't believe the goal is to go eat Squarespace's or Wix's market share, because there are 3 different ways to create revenue in a business. There's get more customers, and at this point, getting new customers for WordPress is new businesses, and or creating, larger market share by taking market share away from other people. But that's a little bit more difficult and a lot more time consuming, a lot more costly. The second way to grow revenue is to increase prices and raise prices for existing customers. They can do that through their various different ways that they monetize, automatic, through WooCommerce or WordPress.org, et cetera. And then there's the third option, which is sell more to your existing customers, which is where I think the road is going, by introducing more tools into Jetpack, introducing more tools into WooCommerce, and introducing more options for their enterprise level companies at the enterprise level for their enterprise version of WordPress.org. WordPress.com. And I think the point of Gutenberg is to essentially make WordPress more appealing to businesses who are either coming into it, or their existing customers who are growing their businesses and want to see WordPress as a long-term partner in their business, so that they can continue to increasingly sell more products and services through Automatic or through the community in general to their existing user base. And I think that's where we are now, is just continuing to be able to sell more and increase the overall value of the existing community. And I think that's the way that revenue and monetization for WordPress is going to continue into the future, not necessarily taking market share from other companies.
Right. So, John, we had this little conversation yesterday, didn't we, John? And I'm just using what Matt Mullenweg says. He's the one that says he wants to get to, 70-80% of market share.
That's right.
If he wants to, I think he'd be lucky if he gets it to 50. But he'd be really, really lucky to get to 50. You've had somebody invest 300 million into your business, plus all the other investors on the other rounds. Where are you going to get the growth to get a return? Because obviously at some stage Automatic is going to go public. That's got to be when you take that kind of investment, the road is to go public. Where they're going to get the growth to pay back those investors and get into a position to make Automatic public.
Right. First, I want to, everybody on the panel has made some really good points. Adrian made some really good points about where the revenue growth is going to come from. But I think the clue is really to see how Matt Mullenweg, talks about the project. For one, they've taken VC money like 4 rounds now. So that means that they have to show a return on investment. It's always Matt Mullenweg who gives the state of the word. It's not anybody else in leadership from WordPress.org. He calls himself a benevolent dictator for life. So I think we can safely assume that as much as we want to say that the WordPress project is owned by the community, in all practical purposes, it is owned by Automatic and it's owned by Matt Mullenweg, and he dictates the pace. Now that, he's taken 4 rounds of funding, it's really owned by the VC backing. Now let's look at how they, refer to the competition. We always brag collectively as a group in the WordPress community about how we're 34% of the web. But I know a lot of people that aren't getting 34% of the money. Some people are. But how Automatic and Matt Mullenweg always talk about the competition is Wix, Weebly, Squarespace, and they're all 1%. And as Jonathan came to the conclusion, the real enemy is .org, because we're never told how much of that 34% is .com and how much is self-hosted.org. As much as we want to think that the idea is not to cannibalize .org, they are a competitor to .com, or at best an infection vector for products like WooCommerce, Akismet, VIP. Now, Automatic has branched into other revenue streams. They've bought up hosting companies like Pressable is owned by Automatic. That's, they're making money from that, not just from VIP. But the whole idea of making Gutenberg is the same thing that they were doing with post formats back when they were obsessed with Tumblr. They're
apparently still obsessed with Tumblr.
Yeah. Well, okay, so maybe they make Tumblr like powered by headless WordPress, and then maybe they have premium Tumblr at some point. But the whole thing with Gutenberg is they see page builders. That's how most people access WordPress. Some people code, but a lot of people use page builders like Elementor or Beaver Builder or Visual Composer. Most people think of ThemeForest as WordPress. So in order to compete with Squarespace and Wix and Weebly, we got to make a drag and drop that's accessible to the masses. And that's how you get growth that VCs want to see. I think they're doing a fine job with VIP. They have VIP agencies, VIP hosting. But I think where they're really aiming for growth is in the lower end of the market. And to do that, they have to have some sort of visual builder or drag and drop builder, which eventually Gutenberg will become in order to compete with Squarespace. It's funny that they never mentioned Drupal or Joomla as competitors. It's always Squarespace, Wix, Weebly, and other low-end stuff that's like $25 to $30 a month for people to have a site. So, I mean, just look at the language that they're using.
Yeah, and I said to you, John, I actually think this was totally unnecessary, because with the buying of WooCommerce, if something really fantastic had been done with it, I think there was enough space in the e-commerce areas to build up a company that could have gone public in just that. And it would have been a clear division between a hosted, superb e-commerce experience, and then if you need it to be truly custom, you had the ability to go to WordPress.org, and it would be, everybody would have known where they stood basically, but that wasn't good enough.
Well, I would imagine that was a large part of the plan in buying WooCommerce, and it may be still part of the plan. It's just that, yeah, okay, turning WooCommerce into something where you can have a like straightforward, simple, turnkey kind of a setup, that's not so easy.
No. What do you reckon, Matt, to finish off?
Well, there's a few other things, woven in the threads here. Like when he was talking about Gutenberg, I forget which part it was, but he said something like, well, we looked at when he was demonstrating something, and he was like, we looked at the data and we saw that people were searching for some term. I forget what it was. What data? Where did you get that data? Are you the only ones that have access to that data? And that's always a contention point with a lot of, product owners on .org, is that Matt and team can dip into search data at any point and get some really, really crazy insights that we just don't have access to. So there's that. And, as somebody who just put up a WooCommerce store that morning in about 2 hours, where this is all headed, the advantage that they will just dominate from the .org is just making the experience as easy as possible. When you start a WooCommerce store, there's a million things you have to think of, and it just plows you with, don't forget to install Jetpack, don't forget to get better stats, don't forget to connect to WordPress.com, and oh, by the way, we've got this theme to wrap it all up. And I'm not against that, because it does make it simple and it does get people into WordPress easier, but it's also like, that's the big play that they will dominate with, that connection. And they just need to make it easy, like Apple versus Android. And like the whole governance community stuff, going back to like what Chris said, when you look at him as a leader, I sort of like get a little smirk on my face when he says, well, I think that whole governance thing just fizzled out. Let's keep going. Oh, has it? Has it? So anybody on the fence has now heard Matt Mullenweg say, oh, it fizzled out. I guess we can give up on that and keep moving, which is unfair. And there were a lot of poignant questions from people at the end.
There were definitely questions on the subject of how do decisions get made. And
we saw this at WordCamp Europe. I think it was WordCamp Europe. Very, very more aggressive than the U.S. camp, asking those questions. And we saw it again here. And it's always just a smile, a chuckle. Hey, don't worry. If you want to make this happen, we can make it happen. You just got to get out there and make it happen. Like for freedoms, you can just take WordPress and do whatever you want with it. Oh, yeah. No, we can't. It's not as easy as you say it, which is what I really liked about that DHH podcast, because he did push him on that, but never really wrapped it up. But you certainly can't do whatever you want with WordPress branding like he let
as an intellectual argument, it's nonsense, isn't it? Mm-hmm. It's just pure nonsense. But let's get to the crux of it, Matt. Does he really believe his own nonsense, or is he even worse? Is he basically a hypocrite?
I think he has told himself the story enough that he does believe it, but I think he knows that that he's steering the ship and he wants to steer the ship, because there is still something greater. I think he is still trying to create something greater than just WordPress as we know it right now. This is just the step.
Well, I think that's pretty clear when you talk about being the operating system of the internet.
Right. So this, like, Gutenberg is great for everything that we see here, but we have another story coming up about Salesforce, and boy, wouldn't it be great if components of that was built by Gutenberg. And the story a year from now, again, I'm just theory crafting, is he's going to come out and say, look, I was talking about this 85% of the web. I didn't necessarily mean it was going to be WordPress sites, but what I meant was Gutenberg is now powering 20% of Salesforce, 20% of Facebook. It's on your refrigerators. Samsung is using Gutenberg for your refrigerator, drag and drop. Like, it's going to be this thing that's out there. And I think that's the greater goal. And he's just trying to build this up, right? He has to build up the cash cow. And this is how he's going to do it, right? He is going to make WordPress easier for users. And folks like product creators might be the cannon fodder in all of this stuff, right? Like the casualties. No offense, Chris. But hey, you wouldn't mind getting scooped up by one.
Right, or somebody may make Chris an offer he can't refuse for
absolutely
for a lifter. I mean, it is certainly possible that other people will benefit out of it. There are inevitably going to be casualties as things shift around.
Yeah, but I think that's one of the fundamental problems. Nobody really knows what's going on apart from one person that might have this kind of roadmap, that map, but everybody else is left in the dark, really.
It's still somebody else's sandbox, and it should be on us to realize that. Just like when we tell customers, don't put all your content on Facebook, drive everything back to your website because you own it. You have to do the same thing here, and you have to just look at it and say, I don't own this. As open source as it is, I don't own the direction, the movement, the brand of this. So leverage what you can now, yeah. and get people into your own ecosystem. So like Lifter, SaaS model, Chris is probably already building it. He'll launch it in a year.
I just wanted to say something a little bit controversial, maybe. Surprise, surprise. In some ways, I prefer doing business with somebody like President Trump. See, when you're doing business with somebody like Trump, you know what you're dealing with. You only have to look at you only have to look at the track record, and you know what you're dealing.
You're never going to get paid.
You need to get paid up front.
You're going to get a different answer every day.
Yeah, and you need to get paid up front, because if you don't get paid up front, you're not going to get paid, right? It's as simple as that. You're not going to get paid. You know what and you make the decision. Firstly, do I want to do business with somebody like Mr. Trump? And secondly, if I do need to do business with somebody like Mr. Trump, I need to get paid totally up front, because I'm not going to get paid otherwise, right?
Yeah.
Well, when you're dealing with somebody like Matt Mullenweg, in some ways I think you're in a worse situation, because you don't know who you're dealing with. You don't know which side of Matt Mullenweg you're going to be dealing with.
Yeah.
And somebody who's a total contradiction that you don't know what you're dealing with is actually worse than dealing with somebody like Mr. Trump.
Yeah. No, I see where you're going with that, right? Like with the Trump, you could be like, how much do you want for this website? $10,000? Let's go. And then we start from that. Where the Matt Mullenweg, you'd step in and be like, hey, what do you want for this website? He'd go, hey, John, come over here. Have this glass of wine with me. Let's look at this art.
Let's be friends. Let's have community.
Let's just sit down and see if, you and I really just, and then it's just, what are you taking me into here? Let's just do business, right? And I totally see,
it's 10,000 and I want the 10 grand up front, because I know right. You're not going to pay me.
Right.
You get your website, basically. You're going to screw me, basically.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
No, I get it.
Right, fair enough. I think we're going to go for the break. Actually, I knew this first story was going to take a fair bit of time, but I think it's been an interesting discussion. We'll be back in a few moments, folks. Coming back, folks. Where else on the internet around WordPress could you combine Mr. President Trump with Matt Mullenweg? Where will you find that, listeners and viewers? You're probably stunned yourself, actually. So let's go on to the next story. SoftBank, oh my God, fathers. SoftBank chairman admits he blew it with WeWork after disastrous earnings. I'm going to throw this over to my co-host. He's got a weak spot for WeWork. What did you reckon about this one, Adrian?
The only thing I can ask is anyone surprised? It's just
I mean, when the screw up is that bad, you would look ridiculous not admitting that you messed up with that one.
$6 billion in losses is like that's a hard thing to say. We did a good job on this, guys. You know, pats on the back all around. So I think this is an eye-opening. This is like a wake-up call for just blindly investing in companies that are like self-proclaimed. We are a tech company and we deserve to like grow super huge, super fast. And if we grow super huge, super fast, and you know, it's like the move fast and break things model. You know, I think there's a wake-up call that doesn't always work out, especially if there isn't like oversight from, you know, wherever the money's coming from into these companies that's doing who knows what with them. So we've seen, like, from WeWork, a gross misappropriation of funds in various different places. They have $47 billion in 10-year lease commitments, and with, you know, no real guarantee of recurring income in order to actually support that level of debt. So when you're kind of just, you know, it all kind of just makes sense, and it's accumulated in, you know, we done messed up here, guys. Like, this was a bad call, and that there's not really much more to say on the issue except, you know, this is just what happens when money or like, you know, when big pockets go into projects and with little oversight. This is what happens.
So, Chris, what do you reckon? I reckon they'll be teaching this in
so Adrian, are you actually old enough to remember the tech bubble of 2000?
From first-hand experience, no. However, I'm pretty well versed in it. We actually have family friends who had a .com, took their money and moved down to the Bahamas permanently. So that's my first-hand experience with it. But that's about it.
So, Chris, I reckon they'll be teaching it. This will be a kind of case study in business schools pretty soon, won't it? You know, when you look at the governance of this particular company and the things the founder and his beloved wife were up to, your eyes just widen, don't they, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, there's a phase when companies get big where it transitions from the pirates to the suits. And I think that's happening now. And I think the suits might save this one. Looking at it, they have a simple 3-step plan to turn it around. Stop doing construction, cut costs elsewhere, and kill all the sideline businesses. So there may be a turnaround story here, but it's yeah, I mean, the scrappy entrepreneur, pirate, startup people, you know, sometimes they get through without breaking the law. A lot of times they do, but they call them pirates for a reason. And when the big money comes in and or the pirates get out of control, the suits kind of come in to, you know, rein in the ship and turn it into a proper corporation.
Well, so Matt, what do you reckon? Was it that they knew the right people at the right time that had bags of money and that were a little bit gullible? Is that really just?
Yeah, I mean, there's just another point proving that there is still so much, you know, money out there. And I think we talked about this on one of the previous shows recently about just, you know, another bubble happening in this space with like Uber and stuff like that. And
right. I mean, gullible or just greedy, right?
Right, or greedy, right?
Know,
that's right.
Pursuing the dream of millions, even though it's sort of like, okay, so like, why is WeWork going to make gazillions of dollars when other people in that space, in the co-working space, haven't? I mean, it's not that co-working is not a thing. It's just that it's mostly not a thing that you would expect to have super high profit margins.
Right, right. And if you, I mean, just look at SoftBank's Wikipedia page of just how much or how many companies and the ownership that they have in so many other companies, it's quite sprawling. And, to me, that's just more interesting just to see the size and the sheer reach of SoftBank in all of these players like Uber and WeWork, and so on.
Is it mostly I suppose we don't know. Publicly, they reckon it's Japanese money, investment money, pension fund. Do you think there could be a lot of Chinese money as well behind this?
I have I couldn't even comment on that. I thought
it was mostly Saudi money.
No, well, it's the SoftBank is Japanese from the founder, but I mean, I don't know where they raise their capital from. I couldn't comment on that.
Finish off. What do you reckon, John?
I think it's particularly disgusting that the regular rank and file employees are not being paid so they can give a golden parachute to the founder. I think it's time for French Revolution too. That's what I think. But the whole thing with SoftBank is it's a sunk cost fallacy. They already put a lot of money into WeWork, and they didn't want to admit that they screwed up, so they just kept throwing money after it, and then finally they had to pay the guy off to get rid of him. But it is disgusting that the regular employees are not getting paid, and this guy gets to walk off with a fortune. That should be a white collar crime in my estimation.
Yeah,
they're already taking a fortune out of it.
Yeah, you should. Yeah, it shouldn't be allowed, but there you go. That's the world we're in.
If he wants to,
I mean, rewarding the guy for screwing up that badly is what it amounts to, and I understand that it's pretty much the ransom that they have to pay to
get rid of him.
But yeah, it still sucks.
Yes. All right, on to the next one. It came in at the last minute, but Sallie found this. Salesforce announces new content management system. So, Sallie, what did you think of this one?
Well, I just thought, the headline really grabbed me because, of course, it's Salesforce that just invested $300 million in Automatic. And so it makes you wonder a little bit about this content management system. Is this in some form a spin-off of WordPress? Is it going to be, as someone was suggesting earlier, is it going to be incorporating Gutenberg in parts of it? Is it, they don't really talk very much about any of the tech or where that comes from, just that they felt they needed something that was really customized for their own setup. And I just thought that the timing was very interesting on that, and I am curious to see what they do with it, assuming that anybody will have an opportunity to see it. Is this something that's entirely internal for them? Is it something that Salesforce customers will be using?
It could be just a self-hosted WordPress site, couldn't it?
Well, it says that they're building a new system, so you would think it might be a little bit more than that.
I could only imagine it's like Salesforce's version of WordPress.com, just for their Salesforce customers, easily integrated with the rest of their Salesforce tools. So that would make sense, and there's like the $300 million is the support bill.
Right. A variation on VIP where, it is tuned to a different pitch.
So, Matt, why would the company invest $300 million in an quasi-open source, pretty successful business model, and then kind of state this? It's a little bit puzzling, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you have to look at, remember years ago, Shopify didn't have a blogging component. Now I believe it does have a blogging component. HubSpot is a publicly traded company started in Boston as just a marketing tool, and now it has all of these components in it. I think speaking of the .com bust, from 10, 15 years ago, and I'd like to get Chris's opinion on this too, is when that happened, you sort of saw everyone sort of say, well, let's not put all eggs in one basket. And then we have all these little verticals that came up in terms of software. And I think now even big players like Salesforce is saying, we're not going to, because as code and developing this stuff gets a lot easier, the cost of infrastructure goes down, the cost of development goes down. Now these companies can make these big moves to own other pieces of other markets that they couldn't before. And I think that this is another play where Salesforce sees, 1% of their customers that represents billions of dollars, probably. I don't know what it is, but they say, well, boy, they're really taking all of that money and going over to Adobe to build their site, but they're connecting with us to do their Salesforce. Why don't we just have our own CMS so they don't have to leave? Because that represents $1 billion. We see this, like I've mentioned before on the show, with Elementor, form builders, pop-ups. Next will be e-commerce, right? Because you're just trying to give the whole experience. Automatic with Jetpack and WooCommerce. Let's make the experience easy so people don't have to go look at 100 different directions, which ultimately hurts us because somebody else will then do what we want to do once they capture their attention. Lifter. Hey, maybe you guys want to do e-commerce at some point because people are selling, pure e-commerce play because, you got a lot of people using it with WooCommerce sites, let's say. So there's a trend in that direction. So I think it's just big companies don't want to leave money on the table anymore, and they can build it faster than they ever could.
Thanks for that insight. I thought that was really good. Thanks for that. What do you reckon, Chris?
I think it actually says a lot about the state of modern marketing and how important content marketing is. And the enterprise or the bigger companies that use Salesforce are the most risk averse and slowest to respond. But as we've seen at the grassroots level, moving up into small business, moving into mid-market, is the world of like paid advertising, TV commercials is changed to this world of content marketing, influencers. So to me, it's a play for, Salesforce is for sales enablement. What's married to sales? Marketing. Well, what works in marketing these days? Content driven by influencers and companies themselves. So if they invest in the lower end on the WordPress side, as companies move up market, now there's they have more influence over as new enterprise emerge to get them on their system, therefore expansion revenue inside of Salesforce with the content engine as well as another add-on into their stack. That would be my best guess of what's going on here. Yeah.
What do you reckon, Adrian?
I'm with Chris. I think that's probably where it's headed. It's just another piece of the pie that they can solve and sweep up, as Matt said, a whole suite of customers that are currently spending their money elsewhere, and then providing the glorified all-in-one solution, which isn't a terrible idea. I mean, myself, we just started our first foray this morning into e-commerce. We have our new e-commerce extension, which is kind of an MVP stage at the moment, but we're going to start trying to sweep up all of the people who are using WooCommerce or easy to downloads and making our own experience all in one. So companies do this all of the time. And I think, as Chris said, or as Matt and both Chris and Matt said, that's what they're doing.
Yeah, I think that's a great move, Adrian. I think you're spot on trying to do that one. Do you want to comment on this, John, or shall I go on to the next story? You muted. Oh, you want to go on the next story?
Next one, yeah.
And I don't want this show to be war and peace because I'm sure Matt and Chris and the rest of the panel got better things to do. So I'm wondering, what's the time? Shall we? I've got 3 stories. I was thinking of going on to story 6, SEO Obituaries. How many times? Is that okay to go for that one, or do you think, yeah, they're nodding. They don't seem too upset. Right, let's go for this one. SEO Obituaries. How many times has SEO died? What do you reckon, John? What do you reckon on this one?
Yeah, this is from Brendan Hufford. He's making a lot of waves in the SEO field right now. But he points out basically this is just like a.
Does he know what he's talking about?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
Oh, all right.
But he's just pointing out that ever since SEO became a thing, people have been declaring it dead for so long because there's always some new bright, shiny object, whether it's social media or, whatever, Alexa, voice, and all these different things are killing off SEO. The truth of the matter is a long time ago, there was more competition. And there used to be a whole bunch of different search engines. Now it's basically Google owns most of the market. Bing has a little bit, DuckDuckGo and Ecosia have a little tiny bit. But when Google needs to make more money, what they do is they change the layout of the page. And right now they're running like 4 ads above the map on page 1, and then more ads at the bottom. It used to only be 3. Sometimes you'll see like a couple ads, but because of that, people are saying like we're ranking higher, but we're getting less clicks. We're ranking, number 1, but we're getting less clicks than, when we did a few months ago when we were ranking number 5. That's just because the layout of the pages have changed. Google is always testing to see how much the market will bear. But SEO isn't going anywhere. I mean, people are still using search engines. That's not going to change. So I don't see how SEO is going to go anywhere unless it becomes all paid ads. And at that point, I think people would just kind of give up. So,
well, yes, at that point, you're not so much a search engine optimization person as an ad, somebody who does AdWords consulting. But yeah, it is that is dead thing keeps coming back on the internet. It's like, all right, so how many times have we heard podcasting is dead? For those who've been in it a while, many times.
Yeah, I suppose, mate, it is the kind of like podcasts and SEO. They seem to be the two main things, don't they? SEO doesn't matter anymore. Podcasting,
email is dead.
And then it comes back, and email as well, isn't it?
Yeah,
they are the 3, aren't they, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, Gary Vaynerchuk has always said marketers ruin everything. I mean, that's where I first heard it, and that's something I repeat, right? So as soon as everybody jumps on the same trend, then everyone's doing it. So then it's ineffective at that point. Find something new, and then it always just sort of circles around. I think podcasting is certainly here to stay. It's just who owns the attention moving forward.
But when it comes to SEO, obviously they've got to show more adverts, but there must be a limit. It depends on the search term, doesn't it? This varies an enormous amount depending on the search term. But how many godforsaken ads? It has reached the limit, hasn't it, Matt?
I mean, it certainly, especially if you search on mobile, right? And I'm not an expert or anything like that, but you search for a term and then it's either image results, local results. And then as you scroll, there's like, I don't know what you call them, but like the metadata that's displayed for whatever term you might be looking for. You scroll a little bit more and you hit some ads. And I don't even think there's like a next page anymore. I think if you just scroll again, it just like infinite scrolls into more results, but then there's more ads embedded. It's a strange thing. But one of the things that, I mean, it's amazing that like the basics, and again, like I only know the very, very basics, but the local podcast that I do, I'm trying to rank for things by just like creating content that some of my listeners might be searching for, like local co-working spaces, and I started making a post like highlighting the local 6 co-working spaces, and it's already ranking. And it's just like, when you uncover a market, you just feel like this, like.
You're not sending them to WeWork though, are you?
No, there's no WeWorks. There's no WeWorks where I am. They're all mostly locally owned and operated. It's a cool thing, like to see like the fundamentals still kind of work, which is cool to see. But in those super competitive spaces, I can't even imagine.
There's definitely a difference, isn't it? Because if you those really, it's just gone bonkers, absolutely bonkers, isn't it? But I think I've learned also email marketing. Kind of dismissed it, but it's going to be one of my big aims for 2019. Is my email list and email marketing. And what do you reckon, Adrian?
Well, email marketing is certainly not going away anytime soon. I may be biased as I run an email marketing company, but as far as search engine optimization is concerned, I used to say SEO was dead, or at least not nearly as effective as it was when I worked in a digital marketing agency. And my goal at that point was to sell Google AdWords because that's where we made a lot of our money. So I certainly, especially after the Panda update, I certainly expressed that sentiment to several customers over and over again, simply because it was much more difficult to do the basics of search engine optimization that are generally taught, which is, keyword in URL title description, several times throughout the content, right? That just didn't cut it anymore in terms of actually getting rankings on Google. Now, there is an actual like formula that you can use in order to get your page ranked with your basic like content marketing strategy. But a lot of it boils down to the user experience of the site and much less what the kind of standard SEO practices that were generally taught like pre-Panda update. So if you're just doing pre-Panda stuff, like that doesn't cut it anymore. It's all about making sure that people spend as much time on your page as possible. They're scrolling a lot. You're at the average page visited is like 2 or 3 times. The listicles. That's why you see a lot of companies doing like 6 ways in order to get your, X result here. Right? It's all about the user experience and just much less about your traditional SEO. And I think the term like SEO is dead comes from the traditional search engine optimization practices, which were taught pre-Panda, which just aren't enough to cut it anymore. But if you start to roll in a lot of those user experience things that you have to do, then search optimization is most definitely not dead. We have a lot of content organically ranked for Groundhog, for example, purely based on search engine optimization and zero like advertising whatsoever. So.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that, and you're so right, Adrian, because I've got another podcast with another co-host who's a leading SEO expert in a particular industry vertical. And he was showing me some statistics because he's got a couple of very large clients that spend a lot of money. And he'd been doing some statistical analyzation of figures. And what you've just said, he showed me works because user experience, keeping on the website, they are definitely signals that Google have increased to the top.
Absolutely. There's no question. Like, if you have a solid user experience for, here's where was our strategy like back in the day when I was in the marketing agency. Well, so we'd spend about $1,000 of advertising money in Google AdWords to drive traffic to a page that we've optimized for SEO or whatever, right? That traffic would kickstart Google looking at the page, time on page, the scroll rate, number of pages visited, et cetera, et cetera. And then we would stop essentially sending ads because by that point it'd be on, somewhere on page 1, hopefully, in the local listings for that particular company. And that's just what we did every time we wanted something to rank. We'd throw a little bit of money at it. And hopefully that would spur the, user experience optimization process in Google and Panda looking at it. Be like, okay, this is good content. And we did that several times. And we also, what we used to do is when Google Plus was around, if you wanted your page to be indexed and ranked really, really quickly, you could just go share it privately on Google Plus, and that would kickstart the search engine indexing and looking at your page. But Google Plus isn't around anymore, so that's a lot less relevant.
Poor old Google Plus. They tried everything.
Yes, it's interesting how people don't seem to distinguish between when, between what we were doing doesn't work anymore and SEO is dead. I'm so old that I remember when what people did for SEO was like, put white text on a white background with keywords in it.
They were the days, were they?
Whatever the keys are, people will try to game the system, and the system has to keep changing to get ahead of the people trying to game the system. Now,
say it with me: marketers ruin everything.
That's it. That's it.
So, Chris, what do you think works for for yourself and other people in 2019 when it comes to trying to get more people to find your product and then hopefully turn them into customers?
I think the name of the game is content, and just like we were talking about why Salesforce is getting interested in content, because if you have to have something at every stage for somebody who's just now found out about you, somebody who's kind of in the middle and deliberating, maybe bigger content like podcast episodes, webinars, and things like that. And then you need a way to convert that sale through demos, trials, phone sales, whatever. So where SEO fits into all that is if you have content that's relevant, that matches the searcher's intent, they'll find you. And you can, I think, understanding SEO and understanding things like intent, like for me, it's really frustrating. Like if you type in WordPress LMS, the entire page 1 is roundup posts about like
Yeah.
the 7 options written by affiliates. Some of them have inaccurate information, and this outranks. But the reason it outranks is because it matches the intent. People are looking for like, well, what are my options? So this stuff, is going to just sit above the actual options.
It's time to write your own listicle, Chris.
Yeah, it's on the list. But yeah. So and I've always wanted to.
I've already done it. He's always 8 weeks behind.
I've always wanted to work with an SEO professional and come up with like a better strategy, because I know there's like low hanging fruit and places we're dropping the ball and just understanding how it works. But I never want to game the system in a way that's going to hurt me. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah. All right. Let's go on to the recommendations of the week. I haven't got one. I apologize. I'll find one next week. John, have you got anything you want to recommend to the listeners and viewers?
Not this week.
No.
Yeah.
Some of you
Sorry.
got something.
Sorry.
Matt, have you got anything you want to recommend to the listeners and viewers? Come on, Matt.
Oh, yeah, it's right on my head. You go to store.mattreport.com. You buy one of these sweet hats. Thanks, John Locke, for picking one up. And the profits go to the WP and Up Foundation, who's supporting mental health in the WordPress community.
Right.
And it's great stuff. I think I've raised $72 so far. So about.
I might buy one. It's actually a really nice hat. Isn't
Oh,
it?
thank you. You get all kinds of colors. You can get it in camo. So when you're hiding
What
from all
color
the,
do you think would suit me, Matt?
I'd go camouflage with a black logo.
Would you? You think I need to go camouflage, do you? I think
After your Trump comments today, you might be taken to the hills.
Yeah, I think I need to camouflage myself. That's what even Adrian's wetting himself. Adrian, have you got something that you want to recommend to the beloved listeners and viewers?
I don't want to take possibly any money away from Matt's awesome initiative there. So go do Matt's thing. Go buy a hat.
I'm going to make sure
Love
I
it.
recommend. I insist that. Are you going to save this, Sallie? Have you got something to recommend to the listeners?
I do. I haven't had a chance to test it yet because I just discovered it this morning. But David Decker wrote a plugin to help you identify the posts on your site that need to be converted to Gutenberg. And so I have put the GitHub link in there. So you can find out whether the post has blocks, has a classic block, has no blocks. So he's, if you need to find that out and are in the process of converting a site for yourself or others, that may be something you want to check out.
I know all about that.
Mm-hmm.
I know. Right. Chris, are you going to help me out as well? Have you got something that you want to
do.
recommend?
I actually just ordered one of Matt's hats on this call.
Oh, great.
Actually, the same one he's wearing right now. I got the black one with the gold. So
Nice.
go to store.mattreport.com.
Love it.
All
And
right.
support the mental health in the WordPress community.
Yeah, it's a good cause. Well, panel, thank you so much for coming on the show. I think we've had a great discussion. I think we've covered some really interesting subjects, had different views. I've made an idiot of myself, but that just goes with the territory, doesn't it? We'll see you next week, folks, where we'll hopefully have another great discussion with another great panel. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.